Hey guys, welcome back to Contest Prep University. I'm Joe Klemczewski. We have a special guest for a feature, Mr. Keith Norris. Keith, thanks for joining me.
Joe, thanks for having me on, brother.
So I gotta introduce you a little bit just so everybody knows how our worlds cross. But you met Corey Probst, my business partner, and our esteemed health psychologist on a mountain in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I did. I can credit Corey with dragging my carcass over 500, was it 500? It was 500 miles through Oregon. Yes. Thank you, Corey, for looking out for me.
She will do that. She will drag your carcass anywhere.
She absolutely did. Yeah,
okay.
She did.
Well, Keith, I'll tell you what, a lot of people are going to be surprised that I'm even interviewing somebody in the paleo world because I am credited with starting the phenomena called flexible dieting, which means nothing's off the table. We use healthy principles and however that meets our genetic base or our social preferences, but it's really leaving rigid rules to the wayside and allowing people to be very, very flexible with their eating. And I often have to pull people back from that pendulum and say, hey, just because you can eat anything that is good doesn't mean you can't have structure. And I often tell people that out of all of the named diets out there, paleo is one of the best because it really hits some of those core principles of eating. So if you don't mind, tell me first of all, how you became involved in the paleo world.
Yeah, so I first became involved in the paleo world probably about back in 97, 98, back in that time frame. And this was during the days of dial-up, right? So in message boards and dial-up days, I was coaching at that time. I was a little bit of backstory. I come from the pharmaceutical industry. So I was in corporate America for a long period of time. At that particular time, I was in the pharmaceutical industry. And I was coaching on the side just because I love to scratch that itch and I love to coach. And I was working with a wrestling coach at the time whose team didn't do so well the previous year. And I was trying to convince him to let his wrestlers wrestle at their natural body weights versus doing the traditional thing of dieting down real hard. And of course, as soon as you diet down, you lose strength. And so there's a trade-off there. And so I wanted to do this experiment with him to where we let the wrestlers more at their natural body weight. But in doing so, I wanted them still to be lean, obviously. You know, it does no good to carry a lot of body fat doing that. And I essentially was going to do this by moderating carbohydrate intake, right? Which is nothing new. I mean, this moderating carbohydrate intake in the athletic world goes back to the 40s. Everybody knows that. Everybody that's ever been in any kind of a weight class athletic event knows that if you moderate carbohydrates, you can moderate your body weight. And to this wrestling coach's credit, he said, I like that idea. Can you get me some more information on that? So I had this new internet thing. And so there I went off into the internet world and tried to get some information for this guy. And I ran into an internet forum where I ran into, I don't know if your listeners know of Rob Wolf. And Rob Wolf and I became quick friends on the internet. I didn't know who he was before that, and he wasn't the Rob Wolf that he is today. At that time, he was a biochemist, a research biochemist. And we became quick friends, and he was giving me information on this ancestral type of diet. It really wasn't termed the paleo diet at that time. And he also mentioned that it had all these health benefits, which, just to be straight up honest at that time, I could care nothing about. I was all about athletic pursuit, and if it had to do with increasing athletic readiness and betterment, I was all about it. Really didn't care about the health side of it. My health was fine, and that wasn't my game at the time. But the more information he fed me, the more I looked at this information on this thing called celiac disease and fibromyalgia and all of these health concerns that emanate from inflammation. I was looking at my wife, Michelle, and going, that looks a lot like her. That looks a lot like the symptoms that she's going through. So I began the diet myself for a while, which for me, it really didn't change things all that much other than cutting out refined carbohydrates out of my diet significantly. I began to remove all added sugars in my diet, and there were few, but I eliminated those. I really didn't see that big a change because looking back on, I was already eating pretty healthy according to the paleo template. But I convinced my wife over time to try it herself. And she saw amazing changes. I mean, within a matter of weeks, she had fibromyalgia. She had all the classic symptoms of celiac disease. This is a laundry list of symptoms that she had at that time. And they cleared up immediately. Mm. And I thought, there must be something to this. And so that began my deep dive into the more of the health benefits of the paleo diet.
You know, I was just speaking this morning with one of my own program owners, and she questioned this. She said, first of all, I see you're coming to Austin, Texas for this big Paleo FX conference. She said, what is up with that? Like, I didn't think we liked those people. And she didn't really say that. She didn't say that.
Right,
but, you know, that was kind of the spirit behind the law.
Right.
And I said, you know, I said, for real, like, what could be better than eating fruits, vegetables, lean protein, and non-processed carbohydrates? Whole root type carbohydrates. Right. And I said, so, you know, somebody like that who really has those kind of health principles are truly healthier than somebody who does flexible dieting with a bunch of sugar or crappy food in there. And so I am, you know, part of the flexible dieting ecosphere is that you should be able to eat per whatever health values you have. Right. And then we also have some indulgences. And hey, if you want to eat 80-90% of your diet very, very clean and healthy, you can have these things. I don't think you would disagree with that, but there are certainly people who have taken paleo into different levels of experience. So you even mentioned to me earlier that you have paleo vegetarians, you have paleo who go to one extreme versus another. So just help everybody understand exactly what this has evolved into.
Yeah, so under the big paleo umbrella, which it sounds like we're both totally on board with, the big paleo umbrella would say, look, all foods are on the table. We take the view that if you look at us as an entity that came through the evolutionary period, what was it about us that is now affecting our health, right? We're omnivores. I think everybody would agree with that. And as we evolved, we ate everything that didn't kill us first. We were survivors, right? We were obligate movers and opportunistic eaters. And that's how, but opportunistic was a pretty narrow window as it applies to today's environment, right? We really couldn't get our hands on a whole lot other than things that were poisonous that would otherwise affect our health. You put that same 300,000-year-old chassis in a modern environment where you're inundated 24/7 with all manner of processed foods and high sugar content and highly, highly engineered palatable foods, which is very, very key because let's face it, the food industry knows every bell and whistle and button to pushing us to get us to consume more, right? It's just business. It's just business for them. So you put that same chassis in a modern world, you've got problems, big problems. So we look at it from that point of view. Well, what are those foods that cause us the biggest problems? Well, refined sugar is the biggest one. That's pretty much the biggest one. So if we're talking about eliminating anything, and I agree with you, Joe, whenever you start to tell people to eliminate, you've got problems from a compatibility issue, from a compliance issue. And just the fact, if you tell another human being to not do something, that's first and foremost in their mind, right? It's coaching 101. But if you taking this modern environment into account, you have to be able to put the wall up somewhere. For those of us in the paleo community, that's the first wall: added sugars, any kind of added sugar whatsoever, and that would be sugar, or any variant thereof, because it all amounts to the same thing. So that would be the only no-go. And then you get into things like wheat for gluten issues, and especially American wheat, because that's been hybridized and the gluten content is through the roof on these plants. This is why some people can eat European style wheats and be fine, come to the US and eat the same, let's say, bagel made with American wheat versus one made with European wheat. And now they've got all these symptoms and problems. Well, it's because the wheat is different. It's bred for a higher gluten content, among other things. But so those are the big no-goes. Beyond that, I mean, we go everywhere from purely carnivore diet, keto diet, Personally, I eat more of what could be called a Mediterranean keto diet, right? Because I happen to have a genetic mutation that, irony of all ironies, from the person who co-created PaleoFX, means that I can't handle saturated fat all that well, right? I'm a small percentage of the population to where that's true. So I have to monitor my saturated fat content. But within all of that big umbrella, and like you said, all the way over to like a keto vegetarian, which people would go, what? How is that even possible? Paleo keto. It is possible. It's kind of called the pescatarian diet. Same thing. And we allow, I shouldn't say we allow people within our tribe choose from all of that spectrum, from carnivore all the way over to what would be considered, keto, paleo, vegetarianism, what fits for them, for their lifestyle, for their health, for their family, and their circumstance.
Right.
So it's a very wide-ranging diet. Yeah.
In one of the things I would add, we have two basic groups that head our viewership, and that is in the general population, people just trying to lose weight, feel better, regain better health. And then we have a really big footprint inside of the competitive physique sport world. And I would say to either one of those groups, as soon as you start reducing calories, you get into that calorie deficit to start losing body fat, I guarantee you're leaving fruits and vegetables in, maybe reducing fruit a little bit. You're of course making lean protein a staple. One of the first things you do is start reducing those starches, especially from a processed source.
Right.
And just like with your wife, Michelle, I think every single person who's ever done that would say, wow, do I feel better when I start getting leaner, start being healthier? And a lot of it comes down to that very, very acute and then systemic inflammation that does come from the foods we eat. Including saturated fat. So I'm kind of glad that you found that mutation, that you understand not many people actually do well with saturated fat, especially combined with carbohydrates. If you're going to eat much saturated fat, you better have your carbs pretty low so you can get that out of your bloodstream. Right. But that's just how close we are, and I do get troubled sometimes in this world of divisions and labels, and you're this and you're that. Right. And when something like paleo can be so incredibly helpful for a lot of people.
Right, and we try to stay as far away from those categorizations and labeling and all of that, because then diet becomes a religion, and we don't want it to become that. Right. I mean, we want people to be flexible, like you say. We want it to work for them, and we want everybody to be healthy. I mean, and that's really the name of the game. I mean, I have very, very good friends, acquaintances, and people within our tribe who have done very well on a keto diet. And in the same, I have had acquaintances for people within the tribe who have done very well on more of my style of a Mediterranean keto diet, and everything in between. Generally, what leads people to this tribe is what I would call the basic paleo diet. Right? Just the basic paleo diet. They come in, we give them the, try it for 30 days, see how you look, feel, and perform. Give it 30 days, kick the tires. If it doesn't work for you, then you could go on and go back to eating the way you were. But give this style of eating 30 days. Oh, by the way, nobody ever goes back, because then they finally start feeling better and they're like, wow, really? It was that easy? All I had to do is cut out these pro-inflammatory foods. And then from within that template, they inevitably they'll veer one way or the other. Right. And they're just, now they know what it feels like to feel good. Now they'll do other dietary tweaks. Do they feel better? Do they not feel better? Can they do this over the long haul? Can they not do it over the long haul? Yeah.
Well, I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks is that people innately think paleo means keto. And I know some people in the paleo world will end up with fewer and fewer carbohydrates because of a genetic predisposition or preference. But for those people who are high performance athletes, or they just have high metabolic capacities, you're certainly not saying zero starch, zero fruit. So
not at all.
How far do you think somebody can go? What are some of the athletic people in your world consuming as far as total carbohydrates, and what sources?
Right. So this is what I've seen from experience and from personal experience too. Now you can ask Corey, I am not an endurance athlete at all. But there are endurance athletes within our tribe who eat a ketogenic diet. And so they fuel their activity with fat. Now that's an endurance activity, long, drawn out, slow, steady pace, right? Someone like me, I am very athletic still. I try to maintain that, but mine is more of a repeat explosive type stuff, power athletics. I have to maintain my carbohydrate level a little bit higher. That's just the biochemistry of those two different types of operations. Everybody is going to fall somewhere within that spectrum. Now, just for me, I've done this pretty much my entire life. I know what it feels like when I'm getting low in the tank on the carbohydrate side of things, and I'll re-carbohydrate up. Well, what does that look like for me? Looks like an extra sweet potato at night. I mean, it's that simple. It's that it does not mean an entire birthday cake. It means an added sweet potato here or there. Or in the case of riding with Corey for 500 miles through Oregon, it means a lot of sweet potatoes. And I'm just using sweet potatoes as a placeholder here, but a lot more root vegetables. Right. So that's the difference. And people just kind of have to find what their thing is.
If you have a value or a principled way of eating where you just don't want that whole birthday cake, or you don't want to be a binger, that's amazing. Like, that's the perfect place to be, where you're allowing yourself those foods, but they're the better quality source.
Right. And I personally, and I was in coaching for a long period of time before PaleoFX exploded, and I had to sell my gyms and do all of that. But when I was coaching people, I would never say you can never have this. I mean, that is just coaching 101. It's human psychology. I would tell them that's always there. It will always be there. You can always have it. Always. Now, do you want to have it? Right? And do you know what it feels like if you do have it and you have too much of it? Do you know what that feels like? Right? And I equate that to college drinking, right? 18-year-old goes off to college and Yahoo, away from the family, away from the parents, and inevitably they'll go on a binge, right? And after a while, they get to understand that I don't like the way I feel when I wake up in the morning after this binge. Doesn't mean I can't ever have alcohol, but it means that, I need to moderate. I need to understand the repercussions of having alcohol. And for most people, that's like, every now and again, maybe, not all the time. And it's kind of the same way with people in their eating habits. I love a great dessert. I absolutely love it. But generally now I can have a couple bites of a fantastic dessert. Yep, that tasted great. Thank you very much. Pass it around the table to somebody else to share.
And again, what a great value to live by. I mean, I think most of us want to be healthier. Most of us want to live a higher quality life, and it's the perfect steps toward that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I would say too that also paleo for us means much more than just the diet and just exercise. That's foundational for sure. But really, PaleoFX it's a human optimization event. Well,
you bring up something that makes me have to put on my NPR How I Built This Guy Raz hat right now, because you stumbled into paleo as a way to feel better, to help with your coaching, to help you with your wife's health. And now all of a sudden you have this unbelievable powerhouse event coming up in Austin, Texas. And I'm going to be there. It's I think it's the third or fourth weekend, April 24th through 26th in Austin. It's kind of a mini Southwest by Southwest. But you're going to have 10,000 people there, 250 vendors, more than 100 speakers, including Ben Greenfield, Chris Kresser, one of my friends, Mike Nelson, and 90 some other speakers. So, dude, this was under the radar for me. And so for me to learn about this and now be able to be a part of it coming up in a couple months, I'm just thrilled. So tell us how this happened. How did you get this monster built?
Right. Well, Michelle and I, back 10 years ago, we were going to conference after conference after conference. At that time, Michelle owned a catering company here in Austin, Texas. It was a healthy catering company, quote unquote paleo catering company. And I owned gyms in Austin. And we would go to, health related conferences throughout the year. And we were at one conference in Los Angeles in 2011. It was at UCLA. It was an academic conference. And we were on the plane on LAX getting ready to fly back to Austin. And we thought, that was a really good conference, but something's missing there. There's no rubber meets the road talks. It's very, very academic. Great. We need that in this space. But for the average, even educated layperson, they're not going to have a whole lot of takeaways. And we were just, as entrepreneurs will do, and Michelle and I, if nothing else, we're entrepreneurs. We sat there and we go, well, what could they do to change that? How could they rearrange the conference? What could they add? What could they take out? How could they coach their speakers to make the talks more accessible to an educated lay public? And we discussed that. And at the end of that discussion, we're like, they're not going to change. They're academic. And then we thought, well, who do we know in our big network? Who do we know who could put on a conference like that? And we thought about it for a while, and we thought, there's nobody. So by the time we got back to Austin, it was on us, and we had a rudimentary business plan drawn out on the back of the Southwest Airlines napkin.
There you go.
And 6 months later, the first Paleo FX launched.
And you had to use the napkin just to make sure it was a legit story.
Right. I wish we still had that napkin. I'd say that would be a great Southwest Airlines magazine story, because it was just rough, drawn out. And our first idea was to hold a mastermind type of an event, 150, 200 people, and we had a small venue. In fact, we were going to have it at one of our gyms. And by the time we had the first event, by the time word got out, within 6 weeks, we already had 400 plus people who were interested, and we're like, well, we can't have it at the gym. It's too many people. So we had to find a bigger venue, which we did. The first event, we had over 700 people and 40 something speakers, and we were off and running in the event business, neither of us knowing what the hell we were doing. So yeah, it's been a learning curve for sure. The last 10 years, it's been a hell of a rocket ship ride. For Michelle and I, and for the Paleo FX team, it has been, for 8 years of that, was just trying to keep track laid in front of a bullet train that was just speeding down the track. It just grew so fast, and this community was so dedicated and involved that just grew by leaps and bounds year to year to year to year.
One of the things that I often tell our program owners, and I do independent business coaching as well, is that you must bring people together. You have to create community. People today, because information is so readily available and free, everybody's after experience. So if you can learn one word, if you want to grow as an entrepreneur, as a coach, it's all about experience. And that means that we also have to have those experiences. Coaches need to get together. So I think what you did was just remarkably perfect. And you may not even realize what you were starting then, but when you look at the organic growth of something like that, and now you can attract 10,000 people, it is more than just a diet or even a lifestyle. You have created a community. You used the word tribe here several times. That word is on your website. And I know when those like-minded people get together, it's not just a point of safety where they feel like, hey, these are people who believe what I believe. They have a similar lifestyle. But that sense of community then enables people to expand. And I don't even like using the word networking. It's creating true relationships. And
it is.
Oftentimes at these events, you're going to meet people that entirely change your world. And you're going to look back 10 years later and say, that was a life-changing weekend.
It is. And I totally agree with you, Joe. And when we talk to attendees, when we get our surveys back, we send out surveys hey, what do we do good? What do we do bad? What do you want to see different? Number one, we do see this as a co-creation with our community. This is not just for Michelle and Keith from on the high dictating what happens. This is a co-creation every year since we've had it. And I feel like the people who come to our event, our tribe, know that. They know they are co-creating with us. So each attendee that comes to this event, that's their event. They helped co-create this thing. And when we get these intake forms back, it's never the quality of information, which is through the roof. The quality of these speakers that come here is through the roof, but that is never number one on their list. What's number one on their list is, I feel at home with this community. I get to rub elbows with people. These are my tribe. These are my people I want to do life with. These people get me. I get them. That is what people are there for. The quote unquote tribe vibe is what we call it. And it's palpable on the floor at Paleo FX. I mean, people will say, if anyone in your community is familiar with Burning Man, they're like, oh my God, this vibe is like a Burning Man vibe. I mean, there's hugs, high fives everywhere. People are seeing again. This is the one time of year where this group of people get to descend into one place and all be together as one cohesive unit. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I have to say, by looking through your speaker list, and the website is paleofx.com, if I'm not mistaken.
That's it.
We'll put all those in the show notes. But the speaker panel, these are not people who are just exclusively religiously paleo. These are researchers, these are practitioners, clinicians of all sorts. I mean, just every single place of performance, athletics, medicine, health, coming together to say, hey, look, paleo may not be the center of my world, but this is what I know about it, and this is what I can teach you from my wider lens. And I think that's also brilliant. It's not just you getting together in an echo chamber, but you're bringing in some heavyweights from a lot of different places in this field.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought up echo chamber, Joe, because when Michelle and I created this event, the number one thing we said is we are not going to be an echo chamber because of all the organizations that I've seen that have failed or have ossified. That's why they have failed or ossified, is because they've become an insular echo chamber. And we don't want any part of that at all. And the range of speakers that we had Joel Kahn last year, which was quite shocking. He in fact reached out to us and say, hey, do you want to, the vegetarian point of view? And we're like, well, absolutely. Come on out. If you're willing to come on out, we're willing to have you. And so that's a great talk. And Michelle has coined this, that we can't grow as individuals or an organization unless we are continually pushed. If your own preconceived biases cannot withstand an outside idea, then I think you need to check yourself, right? That's constantly, and we constantly put ourselves in that position to be challenged by new information and new ideas. And if you look at paleo as a whole in the last 10 years has changed quite a bit.
You are singing my song. We're gonna be good friends, Keith.
Right.
This is good stuff. So for those who want to go down there, because like I said, I'm going down there. I'm bringing down Tyler Mayer, who is my co-founder in the National Academy of Metabolic Science. We're going to have a booth there. More than anything, I just want to see this, and I want to be a part of it for the first time and get my feet wet, and then hopefully in the next couple of years dive in a little bit deeper. But for those who want to be a part, want to come visit April 24th through 26th, what do you think they should expect? What are the high points they should be planning for?
Well, I would tell anyone who's their first time coming here, be ready to be wowed, really. It's going to be like drinking from a fire hose. It's going to be 3 very, very intense days. You're going to be exposed to 5 different stages running simultaneously with either speakers or panels on all of these stages. You're going to be on a vendor floor that spills from the outside of this massive, beautiful, beautiful event space all the way to the outside park that is just south of downtown Austin. It's a beautiful location. It's going to be over 250 vendors out there with all manner of biotech, of paleo foods. If you can think it in the health and wellness space, it's going to be there. And it is a lot to take in, but it is a blast. And the after parties, Joe, I'm just going to tell you, are part, because that's part of being a healthy person, a healthy individual, is the expression of that health in being social. Being social, yes. And the parties are epic. So awesome. Be prepared for 3 days of nonstop action.
All right. Well, man, I really appreciate your time, and a pleasure to meet you and speak with you a couple times now. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in person in 2 months. I'll be down there.
Yeah, I can't wait, Joe.
All right.
You're going to have a blast. You and Tyler both are you're going to have a blast.
All right. Keith Norris of Paleo FX. Thank you so much. And for you guys watching, listening, Contest Prep University, we'll catch you next time with another feature.